Hi, this is Dr. Kimberley Linert, and you're listening to Incredible Life Creator Podcast. My guest today is Michele Malo. Michele Malo delivers an appetite for sanity to entrepreneurs and corporate go-getters needing to make a change in their lives and businesses. As a coach, she creates strategies in personal branding, marketing, career, and business acumen for her clients. As a speaker, she motivates audiences all over the world, and as an author, she empowers others to confidently live a life without regrets. Michele fuels an appetite for success through her success menu programs that opens up their mindset with the idea, if the rug gets pulled out from under you, buy a new rug. Ah, that's great. Welcome to the podcast, Michele.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
So yeah, and I know from your bio that you have had many shifts and pivots in your life. So why don't you tell us about you and how you started out and how you got to be doing what you're doing now?
It's my pleasure. Interesting. I did what every college person does. You get your degree and then you go into corporate America, right? And then you kind of climb the ladder for, I was in marketing. So it was, your assistant brand manager, you kind of go through just the next thing. But what I couldn't understand was why I wasn't happy, even though I did that for almost 18 years. And I ran marketing departments for Kraft and Kellogg's, playing with Oreo and Oscar Mayer and all kinds of really fun brands. Learned a ton of business acumen from that. But what I also learned is the stress of a life not being my own. And at one point, I got up to over 310 pounds. So I was one of the sickest 28-year-olds you would ever meet. And so you have to know that weight is a result of something else going on in life. And the one thing I thought was, well, it must be the career. So I ended up losing over 170 pounds.
Wow.
And it was so interesting. It's like, well, you help people in business acumen. It's like, but I actually left corporate to be a personal trainer, because what I was seeing amongst my corporate peers was the unhealthy, anxiety-driven lifestyle that I was hoping that, because of the fact I had the size 28 pants before, that I have an empathy to be able to talk through, like, I totally understand what you're going through. And yeah, you can talk about, nutrition and exercise, all of that kind of stuff. But until you get to the root and have somebody really cheering for you, it's one of the hardest things to get past. Even when you do lose the weight, sometimes your mindset still hasn't shifted and you'll still see the fat girl in the mirror. And unfortunately, what you see is what you manifest. And so that's why I did that. But what was interesting is another pivot comes, is even though I was helping folks with that piece of their life, I was also helping them write their business strategies, their business plans, their go-to-market, career changes. So resumes and branding and all of that for them personally, that I made the other shift. Now I still help folks with that kind of on the side with health of going questions and whatnot, because it's part of the success menus. But really where my concentration is come down to now is really helping folks, again, because of everything that's happened over the last, couple of years. A lot of people got the rug pulled. So how can I help you? Look at this as a blessing. Mm-hmm. And really reposition. This is a great time to reposition yourself, maybe for a new career. Maybe it's just a different functionality. You were in marketing your whole life, but now you want to be in human resources or something like that, because skill sets are definitely transferable. Or maybe this is the time that you've had this idea for a business, or you have a product, so let's get it to market. So those are kind of all the ways I help folks really kind of look at life just in a little bit of a different vision and angle.
Wow. And that is really important right now, because everything is shifting and changing for the whole world.
Yes.
I can't remember a time when it was like this, at least in my lifetime, where everything was, you go to step and there is no rug, there is no floor. You step and you hope that there's a net there underneath.
Yeah, well, and that's the whole thing. I hope to be a net for folks, because when you're trying to do a lot of these things and you're alone, some of my clients, honestly, are gentlemen who've been working, they were 5 years out from retirement, and they're the sole breadwinners for their family, kids in college, all this stuff, are taking care of maybe their parents. And the devastation of them feeling like their identity was pulled from them is heartbreaking. So really trying to let them know that they're not alone. They don't have to do this alone. And let's just really dig deep to find out, what does the rest of, this sounds horrible, the rest of your days, but what does that look like? So you're playing it out with love and fire, and not that this doomed, like you're in this box and it looks very, very dark. Because I think a lot of folks went there, and it's one of my big missions is to make sure you don't stay there. Because yeah, it's sad, especially like I said, especially some of these folks are only a few years from retirement, and really taking a look at, what does that look like? And some folks are like, I'm good. And now I'm going to start that business, or now I'm going to start that hobby, or now I'm going to travel. So sometimes it's just a matter of talking them through things that they can say, you know what, I'm actually good. And I've planned financially, and I'm just going to start living life. And I just don't want people to wait for something bad to happen to decide that they need to start living life.
Yeah, I agree. So what are some of the strategies you use, or you teach people to use, when the rug is pulled out from under you?
The biggest thing is, I always say, give yourself space with grace, because it is a big shift. And there is going to be a minute that you might need to just take a step back. Because I was actually at an event last week, and they're like, you've been MIA. And I said, no, not MIA, ME. Like, what do you mean by that? I said, I had to take care of me, because another pivot has come based on how things are going. So I'm retooling my success menus, and so I can help people, because I'm learning more and situations are changing. So sometimes it's really okay for you to give yourself a minute and just go deep and think about what you want to do, and also to reconnect with your family, friends, and see where they're at, and really truly believe in that. And then once that's all said and done, the next strategy would be to really take inventory of what you loved about life, what you're looking to do with life. And then hopefully you would come to me to help, or any of the other lovely thing. There's a lot of coaches, and there's a lot of groups and masterminds and things to help you kind of work through what that is. And then make everything, you got to make goals, and then you make plans. Because if you just kind of sit there and you don't write it down, or you don't talk to anyone about it, you have no accountability to it. A lot of times the week turns into 2 weeks, turns into a month. And that's the last thing that you want to have happen, is all of a sudden you look back, because I don't know about you, but 2021 went like, I mean, as crazy as it sounds, like, what just happened? I forgot 2020 kind of didn't exist, so it's just weird thing. But that's why you need to like stop and say, okay, I've got this. Whoever's your rock, pull them next to you, and then really just take, and start to make little baby action plans that that you can achieve. Because if it's too big, a lot of times you become overwhelmed, and then you just sit down and watch HGTV for 4 hours, because that's like all you have like the capacity for. So you want to just break it up into very small things that that you can accomplish. And then at the end of the day, you can look back and go, yeah, I did get that done. And that's one step forward to that goal that you had written down.
Yeah. And when you started talking about this, you talked about a me day. And when you said that, I also thought of the fact that, sometimes we actually need to take time for self-care, because
Yes.
if we don't, we really can't be very creative. And I know, actually, personally, I've been taking more afternoon naps, which sounds really strange, but all of a sudden I'm tired. And then but after I wake up, I'm like super productive. Whereas if I try to push through, even though I might have gotten a little more done, I don't know if would be as productive or as creative.
100%. Okay. In all honesty, one of my pet peeves is that one size fits all for everybody. Because you hear a lot of people, you got to be up at 5 a.m. Early bird gets the worm, grind, grind, grind. And I'm sorry, there's actual research that shows that people will operate on different biorhythms, and their brains, their body, just the way they're made up, are more productive. Now, I'm not a morning person, I'm the first one to tell folks that, but I will tell you, once I get going, like, I'm a machine then. But if you were to tell me that I have to get up at 5 a.m. every day, I'd be taking afternoon naps too. And that would throw me completely off because that's not how I thrive. So that's why I would say, make sure you listen to yourself and not what everyone tells you. I have actually a mentor of mine. He's Dr. Gregory. He's international best-selling author, 85 different books, runs the Secret Knock and all of that. And he always tells the story, which really resonated with me, about the handful of sand, is that you can go down and you can grab a handful of sand and hold it as tight as possible. But a lot of what you're holding on to isn't serving you. So if you decide to loosen your grip and just let some of that fall out, what's left is what is going to make you stronger, and it's more usable, versus always listening to what everybody's opinions are, what everybody says you should do, because you need to just keep what's right for you. And that lesson goes for relationships, goes for your career, a lot of different things. Is listen and say thank you, and then keep what is going to best serve you to move forward in your life. I love that story that he tells.
Yeah, that is a great story. And so let's talk about branding in this time where everybody is trying to get on the internet now. And so there's so many voices shouting, there's even people who don't know how to get on the internet are hiring people to get them on the internet. So how do we stand out as a either personal brand or company brand?
Yeah, the biggest thing is to be unique and different, but very true to yourself. Because what's really important, we'll just talk about the LinkedIn for to stay to one platform, but you really need to just be on there as an expert, giving different ideas that are a little bit food for thought of a different way to look at stuff, versus memes and motivational quote all the time where everyone's doing that. The idea is for you to really establish something that people can relate to. And I've talked to many friends that are social media experts, and this is what I tell folks also, is that you want to be very consistent over social media. So if you can actually build a personal brand, because people buy from who they know, like, and trust. So you can't constantly be on there, especially if you're a small business owner, just buy this, buy this, buy this, look at me, because it's about the audience who is the star. So if you know exactly who your audience is and you know exactly who you are, you're able to tailor messages that really showcase that. And the people who resonate, those are the folks that are going to stay with you, perhaps buy from you, but it might be 2 years from now. But for example, I work in the domestic violence realm. I love networking is one of my things, travel, fitness, and then the whole change CEO. So if you try to hit on those different pillars, so people can say, oh my gosh, I went through horrible marriage and whatnot, they can relate on that level. And then, oh, travel, oh my gosh, she's a Route 66 nerd. I'm like, yep. But they love you love nostalgia. So there might be maybe not all 5 things, but a couple things that resonate. Then in the end, they're like, wow, I actually know somebody who needs a transition coach, who needs to make a change in career. And then they may think of me because of the fact, again, I travel Route 66, or I do a lot of work within that charity for domestic violence survivors. So that's really, and then be consistent across all different platforms, because you never know how people are using it. Just because you're a LinkedIn person and a Facebook person doesn't mean your audience isn't a big Instagrammer or whatnot. So you need to, even though maybe you tailor it a little different, the messaging is still consistent across every platform that you're on, because that way you won't miss anybody. You just might put a little bit more emphasis somewhere, but I'm telling you, just the consistency and that difference, and be you. No one else. Don't listen to what everyone else is telling you to be, for sure.
I agree, because it all starts to sound the same then, and then you don't stand out. So
Yeah, you don't want to become white noise or wallpaper. There's a lot of folks, as an example, I don't do a ton on Clubhouse, but I will see certain folks, they're constantly talking. And it got to a point, like, how much more do you have to say that you're not, to your point, listening, right? All you're doing is kind of shouting your message and constantly on there. And I just feel like that less is more. If your message is on point and it's heartfelt and it's rooted in your expertise plus your heart, that's how you're really going to move a needle. Even if they don't buy from you or anything, you never know that that one message wasn't what someone needed to hear at that precise moment to make a change. So always remember that in the back. It's not always all dollars and cents. So
Exactly. Well, that's why I do this podcast. I try to have as many different kinds of people on it so that hopefully you will resonate with at least one person, and my other guests will resonate with someone else, and someone can get some value and feel like they're not alone. I think a lot of that is feeling alone.
yeah, I mean, you're 100% right. And I thank you for doing it, because the loneliness factor right now is through the roof. And no, there is somebody else, even though you feel like you're in this very dark place, know that there's always someone else who completely says, oh my gosh, you're like a sister from another mother, because I'm going through the same thing. I've had a lot of friends, unfortunately, lose husbands very suddenly. And I say I'm only 48, so that's their husbands are young in their 50s, and they feel, but there's, even though there's such sadness in those losses, knowing there's other people you can talk to on how to cope with that and deal with the grieving process is everything. So that's why I encourage folks, you have to go out. If you don't want to leave your house, at least get on and listen to some podcasts or listen, because nothing's going to change if you just hide in your room. You might need to do it for a day or two. Remember, space with grace, but then there's a point where you need to just open up the curtains, put on the good sweatpants and go out and tackle it and meet other people. Because when you come back from that lunch or that, meeting someone for coffee or whatnot, you always feel rejuvenated. At least I do. Maybe not everyone does, but I do. But I'm also an extrovert, so I take that with a grain of salt.
Right,
So.
exactly. Yeah. Well, it's always fun to see friends, even if you're an introvert, that one special friend or whatever.
Or even just seeing your parents, or something like that. Because I'll tell you, for myself, because I was, again, the whole pivoting thing, I'm originally from Chicago, and I moved to Phoenix right during COVID, right, in May of 2020. And so moving here, I didn't think that this was going to be as long as it was. So I'm a networking person. So the fact nothing was really open, and it was really, really hard. But I look back, but I knew I was going to make that move. And in a way, because not a whole lot was going on, it was a perfect time to do it. So that's why I'm saying, well, it doesn't always seem like the perfect time, or you don't want to do that. I do, when I do some talking or speaking, I should say, I'm talking to, my speech is actually called Do It Anyway. Because a lot of times, even though you might not feel like it, and there's certain times that you have to listen, as women, we listen to our gut, right? But if there's opportunity, sometimes you just need to give it a chance and do it anyway, even though it scares you a little bit. Because moving here was the scariest thing I ever did. I haven't seen my family since I moved, because of they're older and whatnot. And it's been hard for me, but I still have no regrets of the decision to change environments and to get out of the cold, of Illinois. So that's what I always want to encourage folks, is just to really look at opportunity and what you want, the change you might want to make. If it's, as small as I said, just changing your hairstyle, to, moving cross country, really weigh the pros and cons and what would make you happy and do it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had a question about the branding, another one, as
Sure.
far as, you talked about the different platforms. Now, I have found that I can be on a couple of them, but after that, it's just too much. It's just too much
I
to try
understand.
and be the spoken word, or, putting things out on so many platforms.
Right.
So what does you suggest with that? Should you stick to one? Should you be on all of them and just put the same thing on all of them?
Yeah, you need to be on a few of them. But you can put the same content And you can also regurgitate content from the past. It doesn't always have to be original. And always give where credit is due for someone else's thoughts, but you can always share, like I just did with Dr. Greg Reed's, his story. I think that's very powerful, but I will always give credit where credit's due. But you don't always have to be creating brand new, sparkly, shiny. It can literally be just just record a video, because video is kind of king right now, especially now Facebook's got reels, and Instagram is also looking to get more video content. But I would try to be on at least the big ones, depending on obviously on your audience. I tend to be, my audience is going to be Facebook, Instagram. I have TikTok, but I'll be honest, I haven't dug into that as much, but definitely LinkedIn, because of all the branding and the marketing I do, and for small business. So that's how I would handle it. And then just make sure too, like as a Nikki's example, when you're doing podcasts or people, so how can I get a hold of you? Make sure your handle is exactly the same across all platforms, because that's an easy way for folks to find you. And it's very, very consistent. And like I said, because branding is all about what people say when you're not in the room. So if people know what to expect from you and they know exactly where to find you, they can tell other people. And that's really the end goal of all of it.
And you
better hire someone too, if you need it.
For sure. And you mentioned Clubhouse.
Yeah.
Is that a platform where you can actually do some marketing? I mean, some people are trying to, but I found that it and it's so fun to be on, but it can be very time consuming to be on Clubhouse. So what are your thoughts on that?
Clubhouse, like anything else, you have to have a strategy for. So, because Clubhouse, like I said, there's a lot of people that are on there all the time. And again, if that's the platform of choice, and the people who really did well was the folks who jumped on that kind of right away. Because I know a lot of people that have actually made a lot of money and have monetized that platform. But I'm finding more cases than not that it's not happening, and it's a real time suck for people. So you just have to find your niche. And if you can utilize the platform, whether you're trying to build a mastermind, maybe, so you're building up, a tribe and that kind of stuff, it could be very helpful for that, because if people continually come to your rooms, they'll be, then that's something, hey, we're going to also do this so we can take this discussion a little further. Maybe that's where, group coaching comes in, or like I said, you build a mastermind group with some of those folks that are your regulars. So there's a lot of ways that you can do it, but if you kind of just go in there all the time without any end result of what you're trying to get out of it, and that's with any platform, I think that's what needs to happen. And I had to teach myself that, and I'm still, like I said, I'm working and rebranding all of this, because the more you know, right? Like the old commercials, the more you know, the better you can get at it. Because I think the social media thing, everyone is still, except for our masters, our young folks, right? Who know this stuff inside out. But yeah, it's never too late. I always just say, if you're not doing, you at least pick one platform. Because again, it can be overwhelming if you're not using it, but at least pick one that you think, and not, because I'm in business, I generally pick LinkedIn. I'm like, but for me, I also do a lot on Facebook, because I have a lot of followers on Facebook. So I'm just in the last, year and a half, really getting, into and optimizing all those other platforms for myself.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about, you did talk about, when you had lost all that weight, but I would like to kind of know the story behind the story.
Yeah.
How did you go from feeling, okay, here I am, I'm overweight, I don't feel good about myself, I'm not happy. What was the defining moment, or what happened? How did you change that?
There was a defining moment. And there's a moment that I couldn't believe I had gotten that heavy, because I consider myself an intelligent woman, and I saw it happening, but I was trying to ignore the fact it was happening. So I was getting up for work, and I literally had to call in fat because just getting out of bed, I threw my back out. And there was other things too. The doctors had told me my blood pressure at one point was 180 over 140. That's a heart attack waiting to instantly happen. I was pre-diabetic. All my levels, everything was completely off. I looked like internally I was a 70-year-old versus a 28-year-old. But nothing is more embarrassing than literally having to roll out of bed onto the floor and having to grab the carpet to pull myself around to get to the phone to tell my boss. And I had a major meeting that day that I have thrown my back out and I couldn't come in. And the reason was because my 5'5" frame could not handle that much weight. And it was at that moment that I knew I had to change something. And full disclosure, and I talked to this, I had gastric bypass because I could barely walk. It saved my life in the moment. But folks always ask me, but in hindsight, I said, in hindsight, you still have to do exactly all the things you had to do to maintain a healthy lifestyle. Still have to exercise. You've got to watch what you eat, all the things that everybody knows, right? It's not, but it got me to a point where at least I could work out. Like I said, just getting out of bed, I hurt myself. So, but now that was over 20 plus years ago, I did that. And I look back and I'm becoming the personal trainer and doing all these different things. I came to realize that I always had it within me to lose that weight, but I was in a marriage that was by far ideal. That's part of why I'm involved in domestic violence, nothing physical, but the mental aspect of a poor relationship can be just as devastating and have long-term effects from a mental standpoint. And just the self-imaging, that all of that had. So that's kind of what triggered. And then I did all the research on it. But I always say, and I've had a few folks reach out to me, should I do it? And I said, that's not a decision that I can make for you. I can tell you the pros and cons of everything. And the fact I'm not plumbed right. So I don't have as good absorption as some folks. I have to be very careful about my levels, iron and different things because of my absorption. So, but I would say you have to do, and again, listen to, look for, people who have been there and done that, but then you have to make your own decision based on your own circumstances. But yeah, that was a horrible morning. I could still because when you're on the floor and you could look under the dresser and you're like, wow, I need a vacuum under there. I could still smell the dust, of you falling and, looking and like, wow, this is not how I thought this day was going to start, looking underneath my dresser, not sure how I'm going to get another 2 feet. So yeah, that's kind of the story. And I'm proud of it because I came out of it, so yeah.
Well, and I'm just imagining that first week or two when you were doing your personal training. I know, I'm not going to say my age, but I'm older now. And when I walk into that CrossFit gym, I know I'm not going to do the same thing as the other people who are lifting 250 pounds, but I feel good. I feel powerful. I feel confident because I'm there and I'm going to complete that workout. I don't care what happens, but I'm going to complete that workout, even if I'm crawling to the finish line. So there's something about that where you just feel so good. So think back, what was your feeling just walking up, think about the outfit you were wearing that, day, that week.
It was the fact that I had made that decision because I also get the CrossFit thing. Like you said, how many AMRAPs and all that you're going to finish. But what I did was I found a personal trainer and he knew my whole story and I'm still dear friends with him. And he never made me feel like I couldn't do something. He would just modify it. And when I finished that, I was like, that first workout, I cried. And I could cry because I remember it like it was yesterday. I was embarrassed that I was in spandex, you know what I mean? Just the workout clothes, because nothing really fits right. And the shirt's so big and getting the weights caught in it because I'm trying to hide, which only makes you look bigger, right? The more you do that. And I'll never forget. And he says, you've got a partner in this. And I didn't have one really with my husband. So to know that I could go somewhere and it was kind of a safe place was absolutely crazy. And then fast forward 10 years and I ran the Chicago Marathon. Well, I won't call it running. I would say I'm not a runner, but I play one on Facebook. I started and I finished the Chicago Marathon. I don't know how fast it was. And I've also done over 30 races since then, because of the simple fact that even though I was one foot in front of the other, it wasn't about speed. It was about starting something that I hated. I hate running. I'm going to be the first one to tell you. The thought bubbles in my head, was just, you don't want, if you're, you don't want to be there because there's a little, there's a little few profanities happening. But I always, when that finish line, I would stand up and I would put that, and I'd have that little medal and point at the finish.
Mhm.
And I inspired other folks to do it, even though I was in the back of the pack all the time, run, walk, run, walk. I was like, well, there was a time I couldn't even walk.
Mhm.
And that's what always got me pretty much past the finish line. And the running community is a beautiful, beautiful, supportive group of folks. They don't care how fast you are. So
That is awesome. Yeah, yeah. And what did you say? Oh, do it anyways. Do it anyways. Yes, that was the name of your
yep,
talk.
yeah, do it anyway. I mean, when I signed up for the marathon, I thought, really? But it was on my bucket list. But I started, again, you don't just start running marathons. You start by walking. I call it station running, where you go, all right, I'm going to run to that next driveway, or I'm going to run to that tree. And then if you still got a little bit in you, you know what? I think I can go to that bush. And that's how you start, and you're consistent with that. And then all of a sudden you're walking your first 5K. And it's amazing that if you continue to do that and have people, like I said, I was in a Chicago endurance sports, and that's for anyone, any kind of runner, from elite to just beginner. And I'm sure other cities have them too, but it's an incredible thing that other people who have that same dream and will never, and you got the folks that when you're not doing so well, they'll pull you up, and then you're that next person to pull up the next person. That's what's really important. So always know that if you start something and have the tenacity and surround yourself with the right people, you need to do it anyway, because you will get to the finish line. Don't worry about how long it takes you. That's just the journey. No one's business. Your own, right?
Exactly. That's what I say. I just want to get there and step on that spot that says I got to the end.
That's it. And that's in business too. I mean, the running analogy, or any kind of like CrossFit, I'll tell you, I've ripped my shoulder 3 different times, my rotator. So my CrossFit days are over, but I miss it so dearly, because that environment of people, and you have some crazy folks that can lift some unbelievable weight and are truly, truly, but they're dedicated. They've been doing it for years. They didn't start there.
Mhm.
And I remember we would do box jumps, and my vertical leap was non-existent. So it was first that, it's first kind of just stepping on it, then it's kind of just little by little. When I got to my first one where I actually made it and didn't rack my shins on it, that group that was there that day and those trainers that were there, you would have thought that I had just won the Nobel Peace Prize. But it was that one thing that I just finally conquered, and that group celebrated it. Like I said, like I won the Nobel Peace Prize, and I came home with so much pride that I did it, and I don't have to put a Band-Aid on my shin this time. I didn't hit it on the corner, which I did many times.
That's true. Yeah, anybody who does CrossFit knows the bloody shins.
That's it.
Doing
And the
that.
whiplash from the speed ropes, for sure.
Exactly. But somehow it's all worth it. Right now I'm working on being able to do a pull-up, so I can, when you can't pull your weight, they have these big rubber bands you can stand in and use those. So I can do pull-ups with my bands. But
Yes.
my goal is to be able to do a pull-up without the bands, and I'm still working towards it little by little, but it's always worth it to have something to look forward to or
Yes.
something to accomplish, no matter how small it is.
Well, and that rubber band gets smaller. Because
Mm.
you start out with the big, thick green one, and then all of a sudden it's like, you know what, I actually think, and then you go to a little less, a little, so you're, even though it's not on your own yet, you're still making that progress. And I'm with you on the pull-up, girl. Yeah, that one I have to get back to because my shoulders are just not as strong like they used to, but that is such a huge accomplishment.
Mm.
But again, it's all those things. You might need a little assistance in the beginning, but then once that, once you're able to shed that, it's the most accomplishing thing ever that you persevered. That's, yeah, I good on you because I know how hard like, I didn't conquer that one. So in all honesty.
Yeah, and just talking about asking for assistance, I would like to talk a little bit about the work you're doing with domestic violence and, if someone finds themselves in that situation, what should they do? How should they reach out?
Right. The biggest thing that I want to tell everyone, because this is a little bit of regret, a lot of regret that I had, is that I left my marriage 10 years too late. Okay. Even though, like I said, it wasn't physical, it wasn't anything, but just the way it was such a toxic environment. And not always, right? Like I said, it wasn't all bad. I'm not going to be that martyr that's like, oh no, it was everything. It wasn't. But there is a point that it compounds, and then, like I said, I started my own business. So then all of a sudden I became where I was making really good money, doing what I was doing in corporate, to all of a sudden being a personal trainer and, kind of building this business without health insurance and, all that. So that became why I waited too long. And I don't want anyone to ever know that they can't make a change or they fear the change. There are so many, and especially now, the numbers, it was like one in, like it's like 1 in 4 women, 1 in 9 men, all come into contact with this. But as an example, here in Phoenix, I work with a group, I'm on the board of Envision You. And what our founder has done, and she is a true survivor, she's lucky to be alive. And she does programs to mindset and help educate to give women a second chance. So if they need to do careers, they need to do all that, they're able to. She also works with police departments, to teach them how to handle situations like that. If that poor gal Gabby, you saw the officers didn't handle that right. She went back in and now she's not with us anymore. So there's a lot of that. And there's also a group in San Diego. It's the I Am Enough movement. And they are a great organization that do coping cards. So if you just need affirmation, they're free. Megan Fenyo is the founder, and she also is a survivor and also an Air Force veteran. And she'll send out the coping cards, but more than that, they're raising money to build the Freedom Haven, which is a short-term shelter that you can go to, and you would get a bag, but they're in the process of building that. But there's all across the country, there's shelters and things like that. The biggest thing I can tell is don't be silent. Heck, call me. I mean, if anything, we'll figure out something, join some of these nonprofits and meet with the other women to know that you're not alone. But it's especially with all the togetherness, people are like, yay, I spent more time with my family. Well, that's not always great if you're in a bad relationship that's abusive. So yeah, so the Envision You is like I said, the board there, the I Am Enough movement, they're looking to go nationwide once they break ground, but kind of launched during COVID. So that's been a little bit of a slower go because of no events and things like that. So yeah, but there's multiple ways. But I always tell anyone, if you ever need, I'm more than happy to chat with you and find out where you're at and figure out, because they're all across, and I've got people all across the country that I could probably connect you with.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Oh my God, 100%. Us women have to stick together, and men too. I mean, there's, like I said, men are abused, and there's also in our LG, I always get the letters wrong, but in our gay communities, it's rampant. and we want to just make sure that everyone is safe. So, a lot of times you talk that it's just women, it's not just women. It's in a lot of our communities out there that we need to recognize, and not just it's not just one set of folks. So it's okay. It's okay. That's what I tell everyone too. It's not your fault. So it doesn't make me cry because I'm so passionate about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aw.
Yeah.
Well,
So
so people can get a hold of you. Why
yeah,
don't you at this point tell us how do they connect with you, and also what courses or coaching or what services you have available for people at this point?
absolutely. So to get a hold of me, I am all my platforms, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram is at Michele Lee Malo. So I'm a 1L Michelle, but you can find me and no, my hair is long. I have to get new pictures done. I just cut all my hair off. So like, is that hers? I guess I have a blue jacket, but Michele Lee Malo. And in terms of programs, like I said, I do what's called the success menus. So depending where you are, I do transition coaching. The biggest thing I've been kind of concentrating on right now is because of the need has been the career transition. So I do full personal branding for you, LinkedIn optimization, resumes, cover letters. I also am a speaker, so I teach you how to become and own your content so you can put that on those platforms, but also to own the interviews so that you come across the same person, whether they meet you in person, it's on social media or it's on paper. So that's the biggest thing, especially if women with the domestic, if they're looking for something else, I can help build. So you have all the tools to find and get to where you want to be. I also help folks who want to start a business. So I can do a full go-to-market process with you. And also, to be honest with you, like, if an idea is a hobby or monetizable, right? So we go through that business plan, help you write your business plan, funding, and really, and depending where you are, if you need to manufacture a product or if it's a service, but really helping you build out so that you can go to market with a new business plan and all the idiosyncrasies that go along with it. So those are the kind of the biggest things. And like I said, the Envision You here in Phoenix, if anyone's interested in volunteering or donating, that you can get a hold of me also for that, or if you have questions through there.
All right. Well, thank you so much. So just a personal question, what gives you the most happiness and fulfillment in your life?
Um, this is going to sound so cheesy. And it's not cheese and wine because I do love that, but it's really helping others. When I see someone, they call me one of my clients gave me this little plaque. It says Mama Bear.
Mhm.
Because when I see my clients reach their dreams, I had one of my clients, when she first came to me, she's a musician, single mom, all of that. And so she was working all these jobs. She goes, you can't be a struggling musician when you're a single mom. But that was draining everything of her soul because that's where her passion lied. One of the strongest women I ever met. Well, let's just fast forward that a couple years, and she came in top 10 on The Voice last season. And now she's going to have her own TV show. Like, she's part of the show that's coming on. And she's the voice of Walmart. Like, so you hear the background voice, that's my girl. But it's also when I get the phone call that someone got a job,
Mhm.
that the business, they got their first client. That brings me, I start to cry. I'm like, I cry when people win cars on like The Price is Right. So I just like to see people succeed and be happy. But when I know I had that much to help them and to get to where they are at this moment, makes my heart happy.
Beautiful. Well, thank you. And thanks
Sure.
for being on the podcast today and for sharing all your stories and wisdom.
Oh, well, thank you. Like I said, it's experience. And if everyone's like, oh my gosh, you're getting old, getting older. And I said, I wouldn't change anything, because if I hadn't gone, spent money with the wrong gurus, not moved across country, if I didn't get married, all this stuff, I wouldn't be where I am today. So you have to look at the learning out of all that,
Mhm.
and there's some pain in some of that too, but the pain is what makes us stronger to be empathetic towards others who are going through it.
Exactly. Yeah. So one last question before we
Sure.
complete. What is your best advice on living an incredible, amazing life?
Do it anyway. Honestly, take the trip, buy the shoes, change the career, whatever, because there's a reason why something drives you, right? So live life like your hair is on fire. And I don't mean like chaotic, but I mean with urgency, because you hear that with everybody who's ever had cancer or even gotten through COVID or any of this stuff, is that all of a sudden now they're living life. Don't wait for a tragedy. Don't wait for something to stop you in your tracks to all of a sudden realize that life has been worth living all along. If the opportunity comes around, do it anyway.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And we'll talk to you again soon.
Absolutely.